Thank you for joining me today for another episode of the Healthy AF podcast. With me today is Chris DeLisle. Chris, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much, Zane.
Chris is local to Nashville, like I am, and he's got an incredible YouTube channel called Chris Cooking Nashville, where he's cooking meat all the time. What a great channel. So I wanted to invite Chris on to talk about kind of what inspired this channel and his passion for cooking meat. And he's got an amazing story. So we're just going to jump right into that. But Chris, tell us a little bit about what you're doing on YouTube.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me on. My name's Chris DeLisle, and my YouTube channel, Chris Cooking Nashville, is out there for all to see. I am a professional musician here in Nashville. My wife and I are both musicians, and a very long story made short. I had some very bad food habits for a lot of my life, and through the stresses of various careers and some of the musician lifestyle that can catch up with you, and lots of fast food and lots of just overindulging in things, and the fact that I love to cook and I'm a foodie, all of that led me to a very severe carbohydrate addiction that I didn't really recognize as an addiction for most of my life. And we can get into the details of kind of what the difference is now as we talk. But what essentially happened was I discovered Dr. Berry through my parents, who had started doing keto. And my dad sent me some information and said, you gotta check this guy out, Dr. Ken Berry. He's talking about all this stuff. He puts all of these research notes together. So like, this is not just someone selling you something. Like, there's all these free videos. Like, he's not selling products. Like, actually take a look. So I did. And I went on a deep dive, and I had tried a number of different things to get my health in order. It was not working. I was at the heaviest. I know for a fact that I was 385 pounds. I probably was more like 400 at some point. I'm not entirely sure, because there was a certain point where I just stopped weighing myself because it was too depressing to think about. If you go to my YouTube channel, you will see there's some videos that actually have pictures of me at that 385 and then a more current picture of me, and it is amazing, the difference. So I hit kind of a rough fund, and I found keto and I found Dr. Berry, and I started doing this deep dive trying to figure out how to change my health. And my wife and I both had been through a bunch of things with the pandemic and all the different things that had happened. We lost businesses and the house that we were renting, and just a number of different things. And everything just kind of hit an all-time low. And so we were like, the only thing we really have that we can take care of at this point is our health, because we pretty much lost everything else. And we did a deep dive. We started working on keto. It was kind of lazy, dirty keto style stuff right at first. And we found out real quickly we felt much better doing like a clean keto and getting all the products and fake sweeteners and stuff out. And it was actually right before we were going to get married. And I wanted to lose that extra weight for the wedding, for the pictures. And so I had heard Dr. Berry talking about carnivore. I thought, well, I'll give that a try, and maybe that'll boost my weight loss just a little bit for that, last month right before the wedding. So I went carnivore, and about 2 weeks into carnivore, my wife looked at me one day and she said, I see you smiling in the morning every single day. I've never seen that as long as I've ever known you. And she said, I don't know what the difference is, but something is different about this. And so I did carnivore for a while, and then I never dealt with my carbohydrate addiction in the process of this. Life got in the way. I started being a little looser, started eating some more stuff. After the wedding, I didn't need the picture look anymore, right? Like, there was a bunch of things that I just gave myself permission to backslide, and I went back into sort of the carbohydrate addiction thing. I went off, and I gained all the way back up to 345 pounds, and I was just sick. And I was sick of being sick. And so we were getting ready to move. We had about a month before we were going to move. And I looked at my wife and I said, I know money is tight. I know the schedule is crazy right now, but I have to do this because I am so miserable. I'm not going to be able to go up and down the stairs to help us move. It is going to hurt too much, and I'm not going to be able to carry my weight. And she said, I fully support it. Let's do it. Let's go back to what we know is the right thing to do, and let's stop waiting for the right time. So I started back on carnivore. And this time, instead of pretending that I had everything under control, I admitted very openly that there is a carbohydrate addiction I need to deal with. And I said, I'm going to start a YouTube channel and I'm going to do health vlogs and I'm going to put it out there because if there's anyone out there that it inspires, first of all, that's a great thing. And second of all, if I'm having to put up videos on a weekly basis talking about my health and what I'm doing, it's going to keep me accountable because I don't want to let people down and I don't want to look publicly like a big disappointment and a failure. And so I put my money where my mouth was and I started a YouTube channel and I started out health vlogs and they were terrible. They were terrible videos. And I started figuring out like, okay, I have this really bad carb addiction and I'm a foodie and I love to cook. So that's kind of this thing over on this side. But over on this side is I know I need to do carnivore for my health because that's where I feel my best. I've experienced both sides and I know this is what works the best for me. I know not only getting out the carbs, but for me specifically, a lot of the veggies and stuff can really be inflammatory for me, or at least they seem to be. And so I really need to stick to this ultra low carb thing because it's how I feel my best. I have the best energy. So I was like, so what do I do? And I started kind of creating a few recipes, not necessarily because I was going to eat them every day, but when the idea of wanting a carb that I was missing or having a social situation that was putting pressure on me to maybe just, it's okay to have that little bit, right? That voice in the back of the head or that thing that other people that who don't understand mean very well are like, oh, just have a little, it's okay. Because they don't understand that's like giving a shot to an alcoholic, right? Like you will send someone off the rails. So I decided, well, maybe if I make some of these recipes and maybe they're not the cleanest of carnivore because there's maybe more dairy than I would eat most days, or maybe there's, you know, a little bit more of a particular carnivore type ingredient, but that's much preferable to me going back to a carbohydrate addiction. And I'll just see if this tool helps me. And I started creating recipes and one thing led to another. I started uploading them. I ended up connecting with Anita from Ketogenic Woman. You know, she does a bunch of carnivore recipes. I reached out to her and sent her one of my recipe videos because I've watched her stuff for a long time too, and just really respect the way that she's very practical about what she does. And she reached back out and said she'd like to feature one of my recipes in a video because she thought I had something the low carb world needed to see. And ever since then, I've basically just been as full time as I possibly can doing it because of the incredible response I have gotten on YouTube. The number of people who reach out to me and feel like these kinds of things are giving them hope. And so somewhere I went from struggling with my weight and being extremely sick and metabolically unhealthy to still being a work in progress and losing weight and feeling better all the time, but being someone who is creating things using the skill set I have to create things that is offering hope and help to as many people as I can possibly reach.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, you created an accountability system for yourself as well as helping other people and doing something creative.
Yes.
That you enjoy. That's quite a combination.
Yes.
You've hit the magic button there with success on anything. But I mean, if you can be, you know, do something creative that you enjoy that helps other people and keeps you on track, I mean, that's a winning activity right there. So where, if you don't mind me asking, where are you now in your journey? Like how much have you lost since that 385?
Yeah. So since I was 385 pounds, I'm now 114 pounds down. I'm basically floating right around 270. I would like to be able to get at least another 50 off, and it probably will be more, but I also, I don't have like a specific number that I'm trying to force myself to hit because one, I don't want the disappointment of not being able to hit a certain number. Two, it's been so long since I have had that low percentage of body fat, like since I was high school. I don't honestly know with like my bone structure and my muscles and all that. I don't know what the ideal weight is for my body. I'm very broad shouldered and very solidly built. I always have been. So even when I was really, really low fat percentage, I was in Taekwondo and, you know, I was like a martial artist and in really, really good shape. And even then I was technically bigger for my height, like heavier for my height than a standard scale would say I should be. But I was in really great shape because I just have such a heavy bone and muscle structure because I'm really bulked up. So
Gotcha.
I don't know what the actual ideal body weight is going to be for me, and I don't know what's underneath the fat layers exactly. I have somewhat of an idea, but I haven't seen it in a very long time. So I'm not so much concerned about a specific number, so much as I'm trying to pay attention to things like my waist size. You know, once I get down further, like measuring my waist and making sure that's not large compared to my height, measuring, you know, as best you can, like body fat percentage, things like that are going to be much more important for me when I get closer to that number. But
Yes.
I'm guessing it's going to be anywhere between the 180 and 220 range.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of shooting as my first, like, here's where I'm headed is that 220 range. And then when I get sort of in that general vicinity, then like, okay, so let's take some time, let's do some tests, let's take some measurements, figure out where is this in comparison to what I should be, and just kind of be smart about it. So, but
Absolutely.
I'm still losing weight, and I'm still doing everything pretty much the same way. I'm not pushing to try to like force the weight to come off, because I think that's an easy mistake to make, where we don't be patient with our own bodies. And I know my body has way more to do than just lose weight. There's a lot of healing and metabolic issues that it needs to deal with. But
Right.
as that happens, I notice like I'll heal a little and then I lose some weight, and then I'll heal for a little while and then I lose some weight. So I'm just kind of trusting it, trusting the process. I listen to, you know, Dr. Barry's videos, and I like Dr. Chafee, and I, you know, like any of the information you've put out there, like all of these people that are, you know, kind of in the space that are like, here's the right stuff to do. Here's the research. Here's how we know it's the right thing.
Mm.
I just keep listening to that, and I just keep implementing it in little ways and try to be 1% better every day, and just trust my body to do what it's going to do.
No, that's great. That's a good attitude to have, for sure. For sure. Yeah. And you've had, again, a great response on your YouTube channel with, you have about 38,000 followers now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's been going for about, is it been a little over a year?
No, so I started that YouTube channel in January.
This
I
January.
Yeah, this January.
Oh,
I didn't actually upload the first video until like March, and I didn't actually have anybody paying attention until probably May. So I'm right about 6 months.
oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. And you're in loving it. So that's what's great about it. I mean, you've got a lot of videos up there.
Yeah.
So you're eating, so just to kind of recap here, you're eating only meat right now.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
And
Yep. I
you
eat.
told me that eating some kind of a veggie or any other kind of food tends to like trigger you to want cravings.
Yes,
Brother.
yes. So I found out when I did carnivore the first time,
Mhm.
I got really, really clean, and we had our wedding and it was great and all this. And then I actually did, for a few months after our wedding, I did like meat, salt, water, or like super strict elimination diet, and then slowly added some things back in, because I was into like, okay, what is all this doing to me? Because I found this new like awakening in my mind I never expected. And I was like, I got to know what this is. So I did the elimination thing, and then I would test out other like keto type things like broccoli or Brussels sprouts or
Got it.
asparagus or different things. And I would, this is the way I would do this. I would be super clean for like a week, just meat, salt, water. And then I would have one meal with that veggie, and I would eat not a massive amount of it, but a significant size serving of it, so that I would, you know, be able to get plenty of that in me. And then I would wait 4 or 5 days before I would consider trying something else that wasn't meat, salt, water, because I wanted to know, is that going to have an effect? And if it does, how many days does it take for it to affect me? Because sometimes it takes 2 or 3 days before I experience symptoms of something I've eaten.
Wow.
And so I was really strict about that. And so as a result of that, I figured out which spices and veggies really inflamed me, which ones kind of would mess with me, but I was okay if I didn't use too many, and which ones didn't seem to have an effect at all. So now, taking all of that knowledge from then, when I started carnivore this time, I didn't really jump into the meat, salt, water elimination thing to figure all that out, because I already knew. I just cut out as much of that as I could, and then only incorporated the ones on the occasional recipes where I knew that it wasn't going to bother me, and I knew that it would taste really nice, and it would be the thing that would kind of stabilize me. So I basically did meat, I do eggs. I do dairy, maybe like once or twice a week. I try not to be, massively heavy on dairy like 3 or 4 days a week, because that will definitely mess with me if I get too much. But I can handle some. Um, and I do some limited spices. If you look at my recipes, I'll use a few herbs, I'll use a few spices. As long as I don't get too much of those, and those are mostly in like sauces and things where I get small amounts of it anyway. Those never seem to bother me. But like onion and garlic, I can use the powder as long as it's not too much. But man, I put like raw onion or raw garlic in something, and it will mess with my head, and it will trigger cravings. And especially like the green vegetables, like Brussels sprouts, for example. I've said this to people, and I know they probably think I'm crazy. You would not think eating a Brussels sprout would turn into a craving for a box of Twinkies in 15 minutes, but that's what happens in my head. And it's like I eat the Brussels sprout because my wife loves them, so I cook them for her because she's keto, and she doesn't seem to have the same issues I do, and so she eats that stuff and she loses weight, she feels great. So I make it for her. But in the past, if I would test one, like let's make sure they're seasoned right, and so I'd eat one.
Right.
Well, then I would want another one. So I'll eat one more, right? And then I get to a point like I'm like, well, I'm going to throw a couple more into the pan while I'm cooking for her, and then I'll eat one more. Like 15 minutes later, we're finishing up dinner, and I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I'm thinking about Twinkies, I'm thinking about slushies, I'm thinking about a snow cone. I mean, I think about any junk food out there that's full of sugar, and it's like in my head in a way of like, I don't even want it, but I can't get it out of my head, like an addiction, like someone who can't put down the alcohol, someone who can't put down a needle, someone who can't put down a pipe. I mean, that, like, you can't let go of it and you can't explain why. That's the experience that I have with those things.
Wow. Yeah, definitely unique, or a special experience that you understand. It's like your wife doesn't have it, you do.
Mm-hmm.
So you make adjustments and allowances for that so that you can continue to be successful.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great you figured that out. A lot of people don't take the time to test that with one food, give it a few days to see how your body responds, and then really pay attention and accept the effect. I mean, that's a lot of, but you're obviously dead set on being successful here. So you have a lot of people reaching out. Now, the people following you, they seem to be a mix of people looking for recipes in general, or a lot of weight loss people in the same kind of track as you, who found that carnivore is just their way to go?
Yeah, there's a really broad cross section. It's interesting. What it started with was, when Anita started sharing my stuff with her group, she has a large following of middle-aged and up women who are using keto and carnivore for their health, right? Because they're getting at that point in life where things start to hurt. Your body doesn't respond the way that it used to. And so they're motivated. And, a lot of them too, they have families, husbands, kids, grandkids, whatever, like they cook for people. And so recipes make a lot of sense for them because they're trying to cook for other people, and they're trying to teach other people who don't necessarily do keto and carnivore to eat more keto and carnivore things. And so that was where everything kind of started, and it's really expanded from there. But what I think is so interesting is I now, as I have worked on my channel and intentionally tried to grow it as a business, actually, because if you grow a business, you can help more and more and more people, the broader scope that you can cover. And it's like, if I'm here to help people, I want to help as many as I can. So I've been intentionally, aside from my diet, working on learning to be a YouTuber and grow my business. And so what's happened is I've gotten this interesting cross section where I still have a very healthy portion of the middle-aged housewife crowd. And I also have a lot of the other demographics in there as well. And the people who reach out the most to me are people who they want to do carnivore, maybe even keto, but they're trying to lean more carnivore because they feel like they're still leaning too much in that carb-heavy keto range, and they're trying to work the other way. And so they have some health motivation, or they have some reason, that they're trying to lean in that direction and move towards carnivore, or at least more close to carnivore. But they also seem to have some element of doing that seems insurmountable for them. Like they have a family that doesn't eat that way, or they have severe cravings, or there are certain foods that psychologically they just can't imagine themselves ever not eating. And that's one of the things that I've really discovered by doing this channel. It's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about doing the channel. You know, I get the comment occasionally from very enthusiastic people, I'll put it that way, who think that if it's not meat, salt, water, that it's not real carnivore, and therefore you shouldn't do that. And I respect their opinion, but the thing that I had a conversation with someone in one of my comment sections about this, because I instead of being just angry, I try to educate and I try to point this out so that my followers who do see those things in the comment section read what I'm saying, and hopefully that's helpful for them if they come across this in their own life. But the thing that I pointed out to someone in my comment section is they said, well, this recipe is stupid and there's no reason anyone should be eating this. If you can't eat meat, salt, and water, you're not doing it right. And, you know, whatever. And I said, okay, I understand your point. I respect your opinion, but you need to consider the fact that a message, and this was literally with perfect timing, like a day before, I had gotten a message from one of my Patreon supporters. And they said, I have an autistic son, and food is a really big trigger for him. And if it's not the right texture, if it's not the right flavor, whatever, he doesn't know how to process that. His brain doesn't know how to process food that is different than what he expects. And because his brain doesn't work like mine, I can't just make him eat it.
Right.
And she said, I made your pizza recipe because pizza is one of his favorite things. I made your pizza crust recipe. I gave it to him and I crossed my fingers and I just hoped and prayed he would eat it. She said he ate the entire thing. He didn't even question that it was pizza. And she said for the very first time, he had a pizza whose carb count, instead of being here, was all the way down here. And she's like, I'm not trying to make him carnivore, but if I can cut excess carbs, and especially things like seed oils and preservatives and the sugar that's in things like pizza sauce, when you buy a pizza at the store, you go and get it from a place down the street. She's like, anything I can do to cut that out of his diet and make him more low carb, more healthy, it's good for his brain, it's good for his body. And she said, it's so difficult, and your recipe helped. And that's the first time I've gotten him to do that. And so, I told this person in my comment section, I said, these are the kinds of comments I get from people from all walks of life. And I said, just because her son is autistic and you don't agree that a recipe should be a part of the carnivore diet, does that mean he doesn't deserve good health? Does that mean that someone who is 400, 500, 700 pounds and sitting in a chair and their brain is so inflamed that they can't think clearly enough to understand what life without all of these addictive carbs could ever be like? But maybe if they make a carnivore pizza, it might get them one more day into a carnivore diet or keto diet or whatever. It might give them that chance of getting a little less inflammation and a little more healing. And maybe you kickstart something that turns into a long-term improvement. Does somebody like that not deserve good health because you think that a recipe is wrong? And so it's really turned into sort of a passion, because I've had all of these people that come to me and they message me and tell me, my another Patreon supporter, my granddaughter was just diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. We just spent all night in the hospital and we just came home and I broke down on the couch. But I remembered your channel and I remembered your recipes that I've been watching, and I realized I'm going to be able to give my granddaughter, who is my favorite tiny human in the world, she's 3 years old, I'm going to be able to give my granddaughter a more normal looking childhood because I can make things for her that look like the foods that kids see at school and that their friends eat and this kind of things. So there's a lot bigger element to this whole picture that I have tapped into, and with the people who follow my channel, that has really given me a passion for doing this.
People who need to think, who need something besides just weight loss. People who, exactly. They're just looking for a healthier option. That is true. When you get those people who push back and they want something in their narrow little window of personal preference, let's just call it that. It does take some restraint to handle that situation, because it's like, this is not one size fits all. It's pretty narrow as it is. It's just meat, and people can take from it what they want, but to criticize your effort is completely out of line. To criticize what you're doing and how it, and it's something that other people can benefit from. I mean, it's kind of silly. So it sounds like you handle that pretty well, compared to how some of us handle it when we have a troll coming through criticizing. Some of us get a little edgy.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that. That's fantastic, because you really are reaching a broader scope than just people who are just struggling with the same issue that you are, which is fantastic, because that just shows you're on the right track. But at the same time, you're having fun. People love it, and even if people use this as one component of their meal, and then they are good with the veggies, or they're good with whatever else it is, and this is like they just get a great new recipe. I mean, I hear from people doing weight loss clients all the time of, what else can I cook? What else can I eat? I'm getting tired of the same thing. Like I just gave someone your channel this afternoon, who I coach, and because she's looking for more variety, and it's just a fantastic resource for people who are just trying to eat whole food.
Yeah.
Whole food. We need options for the meat. Meat's the center of the diet. And so, I think you're doing a great service for those people. And it's great. And setting an example of someone who's just walking it out. Yeah. When they can see someone go from A to B, where you were like at the point of desperation, and now you've just walked it out through watching your progress personally. I mean, that's inspiring to people as well. So I think that's fantastic.
I appreciate that. One of the things that really inspired me to kind of start the YouTube channel the way that I did was some of the other YouTube channels I've seen, where people are being very real and raw and very honest about the things they're struggling with. And I related to that. I understood, like, that's how I feel. And, I have on my channel, I do my health vlogs, and then I do my recipes, and I do some other random videos in between. But on one of my health vlogs, I did a really special kind of version of one, for me at least. I put this thing out there. It was much more artistic in its take, I suppose. And I started by listing all of the various names that I had been called about being overweight. And some of those were meant as, someone being funny and they were my friend. And some of them had just purely been meant as insults. And I still, to this day, can hear those people in my head saying those things. And, I spent a long time, like, not taking my shirt off if I went to a pool party because I was embarrassed. There's a lot of different things like that I didn't have the courage to do. I didn't have the self-control. I didn't have the self-value and the worth. I certainly didn't have any confidence in anything. And I worked my way through all of these things and sort of came to the realization that I can't change what those things were, but I can go ahead and do what I need to do to change what they are going to be. And because I now have my brain clear and I'm eating the right way and the inflammation is gone and the brain fog is gone and, my metabolic health is getting better and I'm losing weight and I see it doing the right thing, I'm not afraid of people that are bullies anymore. And I realized for a long time I was. And that's, part of what I do in the comment section is, like, if someone tries to be a bully and, start putting other people down for these kinds of things, it's like, no, we're all here to do this together. And I'll explain logically why you need to understand that. And if you don't understand that, then I'm going to block you, because people in the comment section do not deserve to come reading these kinds of comments and see that. Because I was the person that I would read comments on a video. And if I saw somebody say, a carnivore pizza is a stupid idea, this is terrible, you might as well go out and eat blah, 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 and you're going to remain fat and you're worthless, and just all the crazy things that, the internet can bring out in people, that really could have affected my decision whether or not I should go ahead and try carnivore or not. Or it could have affected my decision of, do I stick with this? And I would have begun to question what I was doing. And if no one had stood up for that, I might have been like, well, maybe the person who's making this video doesn't even believe it, because they won't even stand up for what they're doing. And so I did this vlog, and in the middle of that vlog, like, I literally stood up in front of the camera and took my shirt off for the whole internet to see. And it was like, look, like this, here's the extra fat that still hangs around my waist. Here are the man breasts that I am still trying to get rid of. But I also put the picture of what I was like on the screen, and I said, but this is where I came from.
Mm.
And this is where I'm at. And it's not where I'm going to stay, but it's where I am currently. But like, do you see the difference here? It's like, you can't beat me up and make me feel worthless anymore, because look at what's happening in my life, because I understand what I'm doing for the first time. And, you know, those kinds of things, that sort of inspiration, and just helping people realize, like, you're not going to be perfect at this, but if you start one day at a time and you just try, this is the kind of results you're going to get in whatever way that applies in your life.
For sure. That'd be empowering for a lot of people. And that vulnerability is powerful. It really is. Because they feel less like a victim, and they feel more empowered to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Because they have those voices in their head, just like you did, those self-defeating voices. And so they need, to see someone else walking it out. It's that example you're setting. So it's this powerful.
Right.
But yeah, that's fantastic that you were brave enough and vulnerable enough to do that. That's amazing. I remember seeing both of those videos, your blogs that you're talking about, and they're powerful. And I'll link to them in the show notes so that people can see those as well. They carry a lot of empowerment, I think, for anyone who's overcoming something, but especially for weight loss.
Sure.
Because that's what you have to do. You kind of have to look at yourself in the mirror and go, okay, it's not going to be perfect, like you just said, but I'm going to take one step at a time, and I'm going to be vulnerable about it to everybody else. And that's part of the healing.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the healing is that vulnerability. And then you start losing, like you said, the fear of what other people think or say. That's from there, you're just heading to the finish line at that point. Once you lose the fear of what other people are thinking and saying, it's just a matter of time. You're going to get to the finish line, because that's usually what stops us in something that is scary or risky, or where we've had trouble before. It's that fear. And so that's super powerful. Amazing. And again, I'll link to those in the show notes so people can see those. Man, you're doing a great work here. Want to make sure people can find your website. It's chriscookingnashville.com.
Yes, it is under construction. It will be done hopefully soon. But if they keep an eye on that, I will make a YouTube announcement when that site is live. But that I already got it set up. I just have to finish building it, but it'll be up soon.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Well, I know you've got some great stuff on the YouTube channel, and then you're on Instagram as well at Chris Cooking Nashville. So it's if people want to follow you there, powerful stuff, but also practical stuff that anybody can put to work. Man, I appreciate you coming and sharing this. It's I know as soon as I heard your story, I knew I wanted you on here to share it, and it took us a bit to get it scheduled back and forth, just with, things I had, just hiccups, but I appreciate it. Appreciate your time so much. Is there anything else you want to share or tell us about? I mean, I know you've got some merch out there as well.
Yeah. So I have one of the reasons that my schedule is so difficult for us to find time when you and I could both meet is I still work a full-time day job, and I do the professional musician thing. I'm the lead guitar player and band leader for my wife, and I'm also a guitar artist in my own right. I also run a guitar lesson teaching business, and I film, edit, recipe create, and do all of my YouTube stuff. And so it's just crazy. So what I'm currently doing is I'm trying to build my YouTube channel and like Patreon and YouTube memberships and all that kind of stuff, because ideally I would love for this to be a full-time job, because when I go to a day job, it's just a job. It just literally pays bills. It's the only reason that I do it, because again, in the pandemic, we lost everything. I had to have something that wasn't music, because there was no music. And so, I got a job just to keep the bills paid in a difficult time. And there's no fulfillment that comes out of that, and there's no real helping people that happens at that. It's just a job. And I sort of stumbled into this YouTube thing, but when I wake up in the morning and I have messages from people in my Patreon group saying, please don't ever stop what you're doing because you've given me and my wife hope that we can stick to carnivore for the first time ever. That it's, the message is nice for me to get. Sure, it makes me feel good about myself. That's, that's great. We're all human. We all like that self-affirmation and those confidence boosting things. But more importantly, I've always said, if you are good at something and you're not using it to help other people, then what's the point of being good at it? And I look at this as I've been given an opportunity to just help people and create stuff. And I'm far from perfect at it. I'm learning as I go, but I'm trying to step it up and I'm trying to grow things and build a business. So the recipes are eventually going to be on my website. Well, they'll be downloadable and all that kind of stuff. That's why I'm working on that website. My merch shop will be there. There's t-shirts and hats, aprons and cups and just all kinds of things that say Chris Cooks Nashville and a whole bunch of stuff on there. So if anyone wants to rep the brand, they can do that. I have a Patreon group and YouTube memberships where people can go and they support the channel by joining. And then I give them extra like behind the scenes videos and a few extra recipes and some different things as try to give them a thank you for the fact that they supported, because literally I couldn't afford to do this if it weren't for people like that are supporting what I'm doing. And ideally, if we can just grow it to a point where I can do this full time. I want to write a cookbook and maybe multiple, and I want to be able to do this full time and put out more content and be able to do things exactly like what you're doing right now, doing things like podcasts and talking to people and getting information out there and just being a member of the community. I see you and I see Dr. Barry and Dr. Chafee and there's so many different creators that I've watched and people who put stuff out that I've paid attention to that have helped me so much. I mean, like you guys, you don't even know how much each one of you has been instrumental in literally saving my life. And I don't know a better way of paying you guys all back for what you do than by trying to jump on board with the let's keep this low carb, ketovore, carnivore train going and spread it to more and more and more people, and all of us do it in the avenues that we can. So I'm trying to build those things up to where, it's enough that I can stabilize it and do it full time. And that way I can just keep putting that stuff out there. So all of those options are there. And I also try to be really responsive. So I'm doing my best to answer every single comment that comes into my YouTube and my Instagram and my Facebook and my TikTok and all of that. I try to respond to everyone's messages and everyone's comments, and that's getting harder and harder with almost 38,000 subscribers. But
Sure.
But I'm trying to keep up with it. And so if people ever want to reach out to me and if they have questions or concerns or an idea or just want to chat, I'm always happy to, as best I can, try to get back to everybody. So.
Awesome. No, it's fantastic. No, you're doing good work. As I said, I'll link to the Patreon channel as well.
Yeah.
So people can find you there. And that is a great way to support an artist like yourself, who's just doing this. You're having an impact. And I 100% understand that, you do one thing to pay the bills and the other is your passion. And that's where you want to grow. And that's where you want to put your emphasis. And it sounds like you're well on your way with the success of the YouTube channel. It's just a matter of time. But
yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, Chris, thank you again. Appreciate you sharing your story, and keep going. I hope we get to meet up. And we're in the same town. We got to find a way to meet up, get a few people together, maybe do some grilling outside somewhere as it gets into fall and the weather's a little less toasty. But I mean, we're seeing it. So I'd love to do that, but
that'd be great.
Keep it up. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you. I thank you very much for having me.